More notes on gravity. I'm going to put it at the top here. I'm going to put it in all caps. More notes on gravity. Alright, and basically what we're going to try and do today is, we're going to try and figure out a little bit more about gravity. You guys just took your post-test assessment, so you've learned a lot about how objects fall at different rates, some at the same rates because the rate of gravity is the same, and aerodynamics play a part in how fast objects fall. But we want to figure out like some other things about gravity, specifically how forces affect gravity and how the force we put into objects affects like how gravity affects the force we try to put on objects, and how difficult or how easy it is to like put a force on an object. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Hold for questions.
Can you copy that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get there. So the first thing I want you guys to write down and kind of make it in an organized, like note-taking fashion, kind of like I have it here. The first thing I want you to write down is what I have here, which is when you use force on an object I kind of wrote it. I wrote, when you use force on an object up or sideways, you are working against gravity. So, when you think about that, and I kind of worded it in a way that might be a little confusing. So if you want to word it on your papers a little differently, you can do that. But basically, when you push up on an object, so like this pen, when I push it up, or when I throw it sideways, I'm working against gravity. Okay?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mr. Krohn, just like with the vocabulary, when they're doing vocabulary definitions,
Yeah.
they can take that and put it into their own words so that it makes sense to them?
Right. Yeah, just like Mr. just said. Just like vocab meanings, you put it in your own words. That's what taking notes is all about. I'm going to try and keep moving this down and sideways, so hopefully it'll keep working. Now, can you imagine how you would be working against gravity if you're pushing sideways or pushing up? Someone raise their hand and tell me how you think you'd be working against gravity in that sense. Nice, I love the participation. John?
Is gravity pulls stuff down and it does not pull stuff to the side or up.
Right.
So that'd be anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity, just like you put in your pre-assessment answer. Exactly. So gravity, it doesn't always pull things down. It pulls things. There's like a specific definition. What did we define gravity as? Pulling things towards the center of
Earth.
the Earth. Center of the Earth. So when you're pushing or putting a force against the center of the Earth, or in a different direction, you're working against gravity. Alright, so the next thing I want you to write down is this. You guys all see that?
Yes.
Oh, you might have to move back then. It says, the more force you put into an object against gravity, the higher / further it will go in the air before it hits the ground. I love the volume. The volume level in this class is like excellent. You guys should be very proud of yourselves. Basically, so like this. If I just toss this pen up like this, I'm not putting much force into it against gravity, so it's not going very high. But if I were to toss it way up, then I'm putting more force into it, and it's working against gravity because of the force I put into it. So Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes. Yeah.
So the more force you put into an object against gravity, the higher / further it will go in the air before it hits the ground.
This is a lot of
Who's still writing? So if you think about it, besides this pen, what might you see? What's another example, a world example, where you might see something being pushed against gravity? Charleston? Air resistance?
or resist.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Air resistance is against gravity. Yeah, but like a specific world example, like something you do, Danielle?
Like, let's say you jumping on the trampoline, and like you go high,
Right.
and like you bounce, like when you like bounce up in the air, you jump, and then like you fighting against it because you try to stay in the air, but then eventually you're gonna come down.
Right. Very good. So the amount of pressure you press down on the trampoline is usually going to make you go higher. Chris?
Like in a pool, when you go down, you float back up.
In a pool, when you go down, you float back up.
Sometimes when you're underwater and you're not moving anything, you're just gonna float back up.
Well, are you going to touch on that, Mr. J?
Yeah, just real quickly, there's gravity still works in the water. That's kind of what's keeping the water connected to the earth, right?
Yeah.
But when your body is in water, your body is made up of mostly water, and then you also have oxygen, right, Chris? You also have oxygen, which makes us a little buoyant, which that's what makes us float. Does that make sense? That we are naturally buoyant. So water almost, when you're in water, it almost acts as if it's like there's no gravity. But you still have to kick your legs and do things to stay afloat in the water.
Right, and I wasn't listening the whole time, but yeah, when you're kicking and you're pushing against the water, that's the force you're putting against gravity to keep from sinking. So you're not going to float up to the top automatically. Did you already talk about that? Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to work against the gravity. The gravity does want to pull you to the bottom, but we have air inside our body.
Right.
And that's going to make you a little buoyant, just like a balloon would like sit on top of the water. Gravity wouldn't pull it down, it would just pull it to the surface.
Yeah.
So water is a little bit different. We're kind of talking on just the surface, the ground surface. Water gets a little tricky because you're adding a different element to things.
Right. I'll take 4 more examples.
When I went bird watching before,
Mm-hmm.
my grandpa had told me how the birds fight gravity with their wings and their body.
Right.
They have feathers so they can fly,
Yep.
and it'll keep them up, and so gravity won't pull them down.
Right. The wings. It's the wings.
I've
not That's what you meant to say.
part.
Yep. Zamaria?
If you have an umbrella and it's windy outside, sometimes it will go up.
Do you have an umbrella?
Presentation voice.
Yep.
When you have an umbrella and it's windy, sometimes it goes up.
Right. Sometimes the wind takes the umbrella up, so that wind is the force pushing against gravity. Kasia?
Like a football, like when you kick it, it goes up and over it to the home thing.
Yeah. Eventually, it's gonna come back down. That's the example that I was thinking of. Danielle?
I got another one. You know how you like people they make paper airplanes?
Yep.
And, like when they fly it or if it fly, when they fly up in the sky, it go up. Like what I said about the trampoline, they go back up in the air and try to fight against gravity.
Okay, so the next thing I want you guys to write down is the ground also holds things from falling to the center of the earth.
What?
The ground also holds things from falling to the center of the earth. The ground works against gravity. So like a ledge or the ground that we're sitting on, the floor, that's like,
Sure.
because if it weren't here, we would go towards the center of the earth. Okay, so it like, trying to think of how to word this so that you guys don't get confused. But basically, the center of the earth is where we would fall to. But, which is like molten rock and stuff. But we have the earth's crust that prevents us
Can you say
from.
what we're supposed to write down?
It's right
It's right
there.
up
It's at the
there,
bottom.
That one
Can
on the
you just
bottom.
hit a space between the two so that they can just...
Yeah. There you go. Does that make it easier?
So when you think about it, there's a constant force working against you all day. In order for you to stand up every day, you have gravity working against you all day because it wants to pull you down to the ground. It wants to make you go through the ground.
Right.
It sounds weird, but it's the truth. You basically have... So how many of you, after being on your feet all day, have been just like, holy cow, my body is tired? That's because you're not just using your muscles to stay standing. Your muscles are keeping you upright. You know, they're working extra hard.
That's fine too.
Well, your spine, that gives you the ability to be upright, or else we would just be blobs of water if we didn't have bones.
Yeah. So, who's still writing that down? Alright. Well, you guys can still write it down. This is the next one I want you to write down at the bottom. The mass and weight of an object also affects how easy that object can go against gravity. The mass and weight of an object also affects how easy that object can go against gravity. Who can give me an example of how that works? Autumn?
Okay, so, you know how in the test you just gave us, it said you dropped a marker in a